I know I was reading and going, damn, I'm going to learn something fresh and new today. Something fresh and new today, because we could all use some relationship advice, especially the day and age we are living in today with cyber dating and how people could hide behind the screen and really pretend maybe they are not who they portray themselves to be. Or what you said there when you say not everyone is basically coming out the way they should come out, right? So I love to talk about that. But first, can we get to the Playa with prayer? That was a tongue twister. Like, can we go back to that point when you wrote that book?
Yeah, it's actually Playa to Prayer. So it's Playa number 2, Pray. It's Ebonics, if you would, but it's Playa to Prayer. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess those who were probably in that sect at that time, in the religious sect, probably got a little bit upset because I took the word prayer and made it prayer I made it Praya instead of prayer. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that upset a lot, turned over a lot of carts for some, if you would. But it's actually about everybody has a playing side,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't care what it is, who we are. We all have that side of us, and there's too much of anything is called overkill. So what I did was I wanted to balance it out. For me, I always heard that word deliverance, and it's a religious word, if you would, but deliverance always had two parts attached to it for me. It should take you from something to something better.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it take you from? Well, for me, it took me from playa to prayer. But if you stay in anything too much, it becomes overkill. Too much prayer, for some can be overkill because they don't really get a realistic view of what real life is because they're always on their knees. But at some point, you got to get up off your knees. You got to live life. And then too much playing with from a realistic view is too much because you still have to compete in life. You still have to do life. Life comes with responsibilities and accountabilities. It's not all playing. So we created this book called Playa to Prayer, and I really wrote that for men.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was in that realm back in that day. That book came out in 2000. So I was in that realm where I talked to a lot of men because I used to be a featured speaker a lot on the circuit back then, and it was a circuit called AIMS. AIMS stood for African American Male Empowerment Summit. So I was heavily on that circuit, and I was a lot of times that was for men, and I spoke to men, and so I wanted to get men to get an understanding of what it meant to come from something to something better. So my objective was to take them from prayer to prayer.
Absolutely. Deliverance is how we deliver our own soul from the one realm to the next, and how we deliver basically our life from one level to another. So I understand where you're coming from, but the objective to that word could come in so many different ways if we want to look at things with with our open eyes. And I like that you said from playa to prayer, because at the end of the day, we all have a playing side, absolutely, but we all have to recognize what we also want in life. And regardless if you're praying for it or asking for it into higher powers, universal self, or higher consciousness, we all have that inside of us. So what was the greatest lessons you learned when you were going through that transitional phase from the player to the prayer transitional phase as a man, and the men out there? Because a lot of women that I speak to go through this transitional phase, and we go through this awakening moment. But with men going through the trajectory of, the stigma of they should be a certain way.
Okay.
You're a provider. You have to be strong. Don't show emotion, right?
Okay.
So we're hiding in a certain degree, but then we're getting down. I think about prayer, asking, we're opening up our heart to accept and to have that deliverance come to us.
Well, I
So
also believe too. I also believe too that with transformation, there's also a transference.
mhm.
You transfer something is being downloaded when there is a transformation. Something is being transferred. And so you asked me what was my takeaway. My takeaway is understanding the spirituality of all of us as human beings. We all have a spiritual encounter. So prayer is one aspect, and it's a great aspect. But there's another piece that has to also, if you want to say, let's attach an addendum to that, would be meditation.
Hmm.
So now here's the difference because there's another word that sounds so close to meditation. It's called negation. I made that up. So if you use
I was
that,
gonna
send me
say,
my
I never
word.
heard of that one.
Um, but negation is someone who constantly meditates on all that is negative. So that becomes negation. And so what are you going to transfer into your spirit? Everything that's not positive. You're going to transfer everything that's negative. So prayer is great, but again, too much of anything is overkill. So now let's attach some meditation to it. That's a lost art for so many. I think people are starting to become awakened and aware as it relates to meditation, but it's really a lost art in a lot of sections of what we call spirituality, Christianity, the way that people approach what we call God. We want to always talk, and sometimes we need to just listen.
Mhm.
So prayer is all about me speaking and talking and begging and asking, when meditation is just having enough confidence to believe that he's going to do what he has said he would do based off of who I am and what he's given to me as it relates to my destiny, my position, and my transformation and my transference. See, there's a transfer, it's a download that all of us can receive if we just position ourselves for it. A lot of times we can't get the download, so it can't be transferred because we're not in position to receive it. Too much of anything is overkill. And we're always, sometimes the pendulum is swinging. And as that pendulum swings, maybe it stays somewhere. And so is an unbalance. Unbalance. Everything in life is about balance and understanding your rhythm. Go from something, as you said, the deliverance has so many aspects to it. It takes you from something to something better. But it's always a trajectory that's on the incline, not on the decline. Because when it begins to stay on that decline, then what happens is you get stagnant. You
Mm.
should always want to keep going on an upheaval, a trajectory that takes you higher. Because as we go, we grow.
Mhm.
That's what life is all about. We grow, we go, we grow. But we never lose. We always learn. And most
Absolutely.
people, most people who look at it as if they're losing, that's the negativity of it. We don't never lose. We always learn. Whatever it is, we learn. So we just go to something better. We go from something to something better. Just let the universe do what it's going to do. Trust the process, and the process will always work itself out.
Yeah, you have to know what you want in order to trust the universe what to do. So let's talk about balance, because you're talking about the pendulum swinging one way more than the other in prayer and meditation. I believe that absolutely, because you have to put actions into things. So how does one find balance between both spectrums?
Okay, so there's two things that I would attach to your question. First is, to thine own self be true. What becomes true to you? What is your truth? Discover what your truth is and having an understanding of what your truth, because once you know the truth, the saying is the truth has the ability to set you free. But now, here's the key. Know, know thyself. That word know is a word of intimacy. So when you understand that word know, because it's a word of intimacy, because Mary, for example, and Mary said, how can I be pregnant when I have not known a man? So she's attached the word know to intimacy, right? Um, um, when you talk about the truth that you know, having the ability to make you free, it's the truth that you lay down with and become intimate with that now impregnates something in you, and then you give birth to something different. So
Mhm.
now I have been impregnated with something that is totally different than what I'm accustomed to, because now my reality or my perspective has changed. And once my perspective has changed, this truth that I am now walking in becomes my truth. So, what is your truth? When you discover your truth, then the only onus that you have is to thine own self be true, because the basis of all relationships, and I'm sure we're going to get in relationships, but the basis of all relationships is self. You cannot have a relationship without you. In fact, the only person in a relationship that you'll ever have control of is you. And
Absolutely.
most you women go into relationships wanting to try to change a man when you cannot change a man. If he doesn't want to change, and the reason that I'm picking on women in particular with this is because women are natural born nurturers.
Hmm.
So because you guys are natural born nurturers, you always have the proclivity to want to try to change a person. You cannot. The only thing that you can change in a relationship is you. That's the
Amen.
only person you're gonna have control over in any relationship. So that's why I say to thine own self, you got to be true, but you got to know thyself. Now, when you know